Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is the Wednesday edition of Point of View, and we're going to be covering a lot of issues this hour. And hopefully we'll be able to talk with Representative Van Taylor. You've heard me say it once. You've probably heard me say it hundreds of times. Members of Congress do not control their lives, and right now there's some votes going on in Congress, but we hope to connect up with Van Taylor this hour and talk with him. Next hour, I know that we will be talking with our good friend Max Lucado. He spent some time this last couple of months really helping people deal with the issue of anxiety, because of course he has written a book called Anxious for Nothing, and of course now is addressing another issue that is related to the pandemic and lockdown, and that is his new book coming out, You Are Never Alone, dealing with the issue of loneliness. So we'll be talking with him. I think you'll really enjoy that conversation. And in the third hour, Don Blythe will be with us. He's got just an incredible pro-life ministry. We'll spend some time talking about that. And one of the reasons we have such an incredible lineup this week is in part because we have Truth Team 2020. Unchanging truth in uncertain times, and we'll get into some of that in just a minute. But I thought we would look back to yesterday, and that is the signing of the Middle East deal. Many people call it the peace deal. Some people call it the Abraham Accords. I'll explain why it's called that. And I thought it would be worth one more mention, and then we'll get into it perhaps in a little more detail tomorrow when Gary Bauer is with us, because he was at the signing and can tell us more about that. But it illustrates, I think, one of the reasons why I hope you will think about supporting Point of View. It is, to me, so amazing, the bias against this president, and he certainly has brought some of it on himself, but a fair amount of it has to do with the fact that even if he was as mild-mannered and gracious as, say, his vice president is, Mike Pence, they'd still attack him. We've seen this certainly with Ronald Reagan, with George W. Bush, and others, so I understand that some of that is due to his personality, but some of it is due to the fact that he threatens the swamp and the deep state. He takes a very strong stance on a lot of different issues, has managed to, in many ways, alienate a lot of people in the press by accusing them of fake news, which, frankly, oftentimes that is true. And so as a result, you have the statement by the Wall Street Journal, which has really never been much of a fan of this president's personality, at least, but they would say, how would official, they ask, Washington respond if a Democratic president brokered a peace deal between Israel and two Arab states? They say that the papers would be stacked with play-by-plays of how the historic breakthrough was achieved, adulatory profiles of the people in the room. The hosannas to the president's strategic vision would fly from and flow from think tanks and academia, if not from Oslo City Hall, because, of course, Oslo gets us into the fact that the president has been nominated again for the Nobel Peace Prize, and he will not win. We understand that because of the bias against him. And so the editors of the Wall Street Journal put it this way: the reaction Tuesday to the signing of the Abraham Accords between Israel, the United States, Arab Emirates, and Bahrain in the White House was more muted, and maybe that's for the best. Again, the Abraham Accords are called that because, after all, Abraham is considered the prophet, if you will, of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And in some respects, you're bringing together such diverse groups in this regard. But nevertheless, they will go on and say that even if the
mainstream press won't give him any credit. The Trump administration, according to the Wall Street Journal, says he deserves credit for taking advantage of some of the strategic shifts that have taken place in the Middle East and for setting aside this failed conventional playbook for how Arab-Israeli comedy could be achieved. And what he's meaning there is that there's always been an assumption that we work with Israel and the Palestinians first. And after a while, I think most people said there's never going to come anything from the PLO in the past or the Palestinian Authority now. And so, as they point out, American negotiators have tried for years to press the Israelis and Palestinians to give up something in a leap of faith and hope that peace will follow. Each side saw it as a lose-lose proposition. But peace between Arab states and Israel offered a win-win. And so this is, again, how this took place. I mentioned yesterday, but let me go through it because they go into it in detail. A little detail, let's be honest, because I think I went into more detail than this article does. But nevertheless, they talked about the fact that the previous president, that would be Barack Obama, attempted to have some kind of courtship with Iran. And yet that just didn't work out very well. And so this president withdrew from the nuclear deal. So we were told then that this was going to be a hot spot and the tensions would grow. And then President Trump even had the temerity or I have to say the courage, I should say, to actually kill the man who was responsible for so much of the aggression in the Middle East from Iran, that is Qasem Soleimani, which then we were told was really going to be a problem. And meanwhile, of course, the president also moved the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which many people predicted would be the death knell for peace. And yet, of course, just the opposite. It showed to Israel with pulling out of the flawed nuclear deal, killing Qasem Soleimani, and moving the embassy, that actually the United States is a friend of Israel. And that then made us a very trusted broker in the peace region. They also talk about some others in terms of the administration standing with Saudi Arabia and the war of Yemen. They don't mention, I don't think, one that I have mentioned before, and that is also the recognition of the Golan Heights by the United States. And so when you take all of that together, what most people were convinced was never going to work, what most people were convinced would be a failure for his son-in-law, and ultimately a failure for the so-called art of the deal maker, turned out to be an outstanding success. And I do agree with the Wall Street Journal. If this was a different time, this would be actually something that would be covered time and time again. We barely even know the people that actually brokered the deal. One of them referred to him as the guy who gets your coffee. So that's how they minimize these individuals that were engaged in the negotiation. And Jared Kushner and all the others don't get any credit. President Trump doesn't get any credit, but he does deserve credit. And in a different time, when there weren't as many people upset about Donald Trump, and if he hadn't gone out of his way maybe to antagonize so many people, so I put blame on both sides, we would be, as they said, talking about how momentous this was. There would be programs on this is the first peace deal in more than basically 2 decades, and it was a historic breakthrough that's going to lead to others. And instead, it was pretty much ignored yesterday. Of course, Nancy Pelosi said, well, he just did this because he's trying to take attention away from all the people he's killed in COVID-19. And I think it was the Washington Post said, well, yeah, but just wait. This is going to be a disaster. This is all a mirage. And, we'll see. Proof is in the pudding, and we'll figure that out. But if nothing else, the president, whether you agree with the president or not, whether this was Barack Obama, George Bush, or Donald Trump, this is something that is worth some attention. That's why I gave it some attention here today. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, if we have not been joined by Representative Van Taylor, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can help us through Truth Team 2020, because in some respects, we are bringing these kinds of news and program and commentary to you because of your financial support. So we'll talk about that right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Back in July, one social commentator concluded that even the most prestigious public relations firms could not have come up with a more effective advertising campaign for gun manufacturers than what was happening in the streets. While riots were breaking out in our major cities, protesters were marching with "Defund the Police" signs. Many Americans who never planned to buy a firearm were having second thoughts. A civilized society expects a level of law and order. It depends on police officers to safeguard the peace. The anti-gun viewpoint can't last too long when an anti-cop message is being proclaimed from rioters throwing bricks through windows. And it's hard to feel safe when threatening gangs move through cities and even to suburbs. The demand for guns is greater than anyone would have imagined. The best estimates are that nearly 5 million gun sales have taken place over the last few months. There is no evidence that this surge in gun purchases will abate before November. Mark Smith, CEO of Smith & Wesson, explains that consumer demand for our products during the quarter still exceeded our internal manufacturing capacity levels. The company is now running at maximum capacity. Gun sales would probably be even higher if it weren't for two limitations. The first should be obvious. Demand has exceeded supply in many gun shops. Second, it is nearly impossible in many major cities for law-abiding citizens to purchase a handgun. The Supreme Court decisions of Heller and McDonald were supposed to remove most of those restrictions, but many still remain. Gun control advocates have wanted to reduce the number of firearms in America, but the riots and the "Defund the Police" slogans are actually increasing the number of guns in this country. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Racism, go to viewpoints.info/racism. That's viewpoints.info/racism. Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
Over the years that I've been involved in ministry as a pastor, as a seminary professor, and now in what we do, it was at one point difficult for me to ask people to support a ministry financially. I kind of had this idea that I was asking something from them, that it was in some sense a favor they're doing for me or whatnot. Over the years, I've come to understand, if you find something God's in, then giving them an opportunity to invest in that is a privilege. Giving somebody a chance to join God at work, to give a gift that is going to be used literally to change lives and souls and to literally make a difference all around the world is a privilege. I want to be part of something like that. I want my life to count. I want to leave a legacy. I want to do something that matters. Point of view matters. Every day it matters. You're speaking the truth in love. You're speaking God's word, and it never returns void. And our listeners have an opportunity to invest in eternal difference if they'll do this.
Jim Dennison, again, encouraging you to support this ministry, and you can do so. It is Truth Team 2020 this week. Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times, 1-800-347-5151. Let me encourage some of you that have been listening to this program, maybe appreciated the conversation we had yesterday at this hour with Candy Noble. Tomorrow we'll be talking with Angela Paxton. Now we'll be talking, of course, as I mentioned earlier, with Representative Van Taylor. And if you have appreciated some of that conversation that takes place here, I'd encourage you to make that phone call, 800-347-5151. Make your pledge. You don't have to have all the money right now, or of course you can go to the website pointofview.net. There you can also give, and you also find a link to the website for Van Taylor, who represents the 3rd Congressional District in the state of Texas and is right there in Washington, D.C. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, members of Congress do not control their lives, so if you hear a buzz or a beep and he has to go back and vote, we will certainly understand that. Van Taylor Taylor. Always great to have you on the program with us.
Hey, it is great to be back on with you, Kerby, and hello to all your great listeners out there.
Let me just mention that the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, says the House should remain in session until the coronavirus stimulus deal is reached. You're our eyes and ears back there. How close are we to actually having a deal, or is this still very far apart?
Well, let me say that it is dismaying to me that the House of Representatives has met for a total of 19 days in the last 6 months.
Whoa.
That's just an incredible. Well, and I mean, if America had ever needed us, it was now. And there is work to do and important things, whether it's helping with the pandemic, on a medical side, with contact tracing, with testing, with helping people pay for being sick with COVID. And Congress has stepped up and helped in a lot of ways, but there's much more work to do. For instance, I've been working on a bipartisan basis with Donna Shalala, Congresswoman from Florida, to try to create a national standard for vital statistics. We need a national standard for vital statistics in this country. And I'm proud to work on a bipartisan basis to get that done. But, there are limited opportunities to do that because we are meeting so infrequently.
Unbelievable.
Congress is just not here to do that. And then we've got this incredible economic crisis in front of us. This is unquestionably the most difficult economic times that any of us have ever faced. It has certainly been incredibly difficult for so many of our phenomenal business leaders that I have the privilege of serving and talking to on a daily basis in Collin County. And as part of having a 100% meeting policy, I'm fortunate to get to listen to so many people that want to sit down and talk to me and tell me what's important to them. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to listen to their concerns. And, Congress needs to do real work on helping businesses. We need to do real work on helping people who, get through mortgage payments that are not run by banks or by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac because they need to forbear on their mortgage payments. And I've been working very hard on that, but just Congress is really not meeting. And that, in turn, a lot of the process, the legislative process, requires meeting in person to sit down and discuss things with people. And I found this has been a very difficult time legislatively to really work through and understand issues because we're just not here. I mean, Congress is not in Washington. When they're not in Washington, they're not doing the people's work. And what's worse is that Speaker Pelosi, unfortunately, on a totally partisan basis, allowed remote voting, and that's allowing approximately 20% of members of Congress not to show up in Washington. And when they're not in Washington, you can't talk to them. You can't find them and on the floor and say, hey, Bob, John, Sally, I've got a problem. We need to talk about this. Here's some of my ideas. What do you think? And that's really what Congress intended is with a republic is that the people of the 3rd District were gracious enough to trust me to be their elected representative to work for them, to come to Congress and to work for them. And so I am their proxy. And then to what unfortunately Speaker Pelosi did is say, well, those proxies don't have to show up. And when they don't show up, those people are cut out. Now, I want to be very clear. I have never missed a day. I'm here every day that Congress is in, and I've been working hard. Your question about, where are we on a deal? It was really heartbreaking to see people pull out stuff that they had wanted, wish lists from years ago that they've been hawking for a long time to try to use this pandemic as an excuse to get their partisan wish list through, and that's not what's needed right now. What's needed right now are real solutions to real problems that we are faced with in this pandemic.
Yes.
And so I believe there is a deal to be had, and a bipartisan group, the Problem Solver Group, which I am part of, worked very hard over the last month. But in Zoom calls, no in-person meetings. We worked in Zoom calls to come up with a framework of a deal. We introduced that yesterday, and actually the Washington Post actually had an editorial saying this shows that a deal can be done, that we can come together on a bipartisan basis and craft something that's workable. I know the White House is very much in earnest, but again, you've seen people place their partisan wish list on these bills instead of really focusing on the pandemic.
Just before we take a break, let's talk about that, because that Problem Solvers Caucus is one that I've been hearing about, and you're part of it. And it is both Republicans and Democrats, because you are perhaps more than anybody I know dedicated to a bipartisan solution. That's what you did when you were both a state representative and a state senator. And I've been a little more encouraged to see that that is a group that's made up of people of both parties. True?
Sure, absolutely. No, we have 25 Republicans and 25 Democrats, and we work on a bipartisan basis to try to come up with real solutions to big problems. And so what we suggested yesterday is as big as it gets. We're saying, look, here is a deal to be had. What's frustrating is that Congress is able to come together again on a bipartisan basis with CARES 1, CARES 2, CARES 3. Unfortunately, the House kind of veered off and said we've got this huge partisan wish list of a bunch of stuff. And I mean, look, whatever you may think about legalizing marijuana, I think we can all agree that that isn't the focus of the problem in front of us. That's neither an economic problem nor a medical problem. That is something that, again, I'm not saying it shouldn't have its day and have its vote and have a discussion. What I'm saying is it doesn't really belong in a CARES 4 package. But that's what the Democrats unfortunately did, is they loaded up a huge wish list. One of their own members called it a stunt and said this is not a serious effort to come to a solution.
Trying to have what was called a skinny stimulus deal that didn't happen. I hear the bell in the background. Do you have to go vote again?
So that means that I have got to go vote.
Yes.
But the voting is timed now. So I should have the time to be here with you through your next segment.
Okay. Well, and when we come back, I thought maybe for just a minute, since we're talking about dysfunction, somebody who you know and somebody we've had on this program, Senator Ben Sasse, a while back, wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal about what he thought should happen to deal with the dysfunction in the Senate. And as I read through that, except for the repeal of the 17th Amendment, almost everything he listed is something I think I've heard Representative Van Taylor talk about. So we might come back and talk about that for just a minute. And if you have time, I noticed in Harris County, of course, you don't represent Harris County, you represent Collin County, but in Harris County, the Attorney General Ken Paxton said, no, you cannot send out unsolicited mail-in ballots. And I thought maybe you have some thoughts about that. So let's take one of those mandatory breaks. And Van Taylor, if he can stay with us as long as he can, but the moment he has to leave, you understand that, because members of Congress have duties that are very responsible for. And so let me encourage you while we go to a break. This would be a perfect time if you say, I really appreciate the conversation you're having here. I'd like to make a gift. And that number is 800-347-5151. I would like to pledge a gift. If you don't have the money right now, that is fine. And the website is pointofview.net. Let me add that Monday we didn't have a match. Yesterday we did. Today we have a match. So again, we have some individuals that have stepped forward and say that this is a dollar for dollar match. So if you would like to join us at $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year, that becomes $720. If you say, look, I can only give you $100. Okay, $100 becomes $200. 800-347-5151.
2020 was supposed to be the year of sharper vision, but from the smoke of wildfires to the smoke of burning cities and a seemingly endless flood of concern over coronavirus, let's just say that almost no one is seeing clearly right now what our future will be. But when you have fuzzy vision, you get glasses. You do something to help you see the world as it really is. When you see chaos in our land, you do something, you vote, you anchor yourself in unchanging truth in uncertain times. You can provide that for countless people over the coming week by joining with many others as members of the Point of View Truth Team. The something you can do right now is become a monthly partner in our work. Don't settle for fuzziness. Provide our land with clarity by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation with Representative Van Taylor. Again, he's going to have to vote in just a minute, so we won't keep him here for too long. But again, represents the 3rd Congressional District. And Van, one of the things that I mentioned in a commentary coming out is Ben Sass spent some time saying that, if you could bring the founders back, they would be amazed at our technology, but they would lament what the two, especially in this case, he was writing about what the United States Senate has become. And yet he has a lot of recommendations, with the exception of repealing the 17th Amendment, which was ratified in 1913 for the direct election of senators, every other criticism and suggestion he makes is one I've heard you say. Things like, maybe we should cut the cameras because, after all, the representatives seem more interested in competing for sound bites than really asking good questions. That Congress should make a budget. What a concept. And you've pointed out that on some of these situations, we don't really pack the House. Many times when somebody's giving a speech, they're speaking to an empty chamber. There's no budget. This is not the way anybody would run their family or their business, but that's unfortunately how we run Congress today, isn't it?
Sure. It's interesting that, Senator Sass's comments, I think, are well taken and well made. I think, to me, as I look at the U.S. Congress, I see the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate of two of the 101 legislative chambers in this country. And they have varying levels of productivity. And I think in my own time in the Texas legislature, I had the privilege of serving in a legislative body that is very efficient, very competent, gets a lot done. So, for instance, the Texas legislature has passed every budget on time since 1963. It's always balanced. The Congress, they created a budgeting system in 1975 that they implemented in 1976. And since then, they've only been able to get 4 of their budgets on time. They have a balanced one in 22 years. I have never voted on a budget, to give you an idea about how defective the legislative body I serve in is. And I don't believe it's a reflection of our politics. Otherwise, Texas would be just as dysfunctional as Washington. I think it's a reflection of how the legislative process that we put in place. And budgeting is one I like to harp on. I mean, that's a system. Basically, everybody uses single bill budgets. And Congress used, past tense, a single bill budget until 1976, when they went to the current system, which is an unlimited number of authorization bills and then a budget and then 12 separate appropriations bills. And as soon as they went to that, the wheels basically came off the bus. We've had 21 shutdowns and 21 Congresses. It's a system that's never worked. And Congress has tried to rework the 1976 budgeting system. And it's unique. It's the only one in the world like it. I mean, it's not like you could say, oh, this works great in this state or city or country, because it doesn't. No one uses it, and no one from the outside looking in would ever want to implement it for themselves.
For
no
sure.
one would look at our system and say, hey, that's the one for me.
Oh, yeah, that's going to work so well. Yeah.
Yeah, these guys can't make it work, so certainly it'll work for me. No one does that. I mean, you go look at things that do work, and you use those. You would never use this. So, but that's a good example of just and again, that's just stepping outside the box a little bit and saying, hey, were we always this bad? The answer was no. We never really had shutdowns until we used this current budgeting system. But it's so broken that literally we have not even voted. I've never voted on a budget in my year and a half or 2 years in Congress. And it's literally unremarkable. I mean, my colleagues are like, that's just what we don't do budgets here. That's just not what we do. And we're actually facing a shutdown in the federal government in 14 days if we don't pass a continuing resolution, which is how we generally appropriate money. Yeah. But again, it's a sign that, hey, the system we have is defective. And I don't think it's the people in the system. And I think that's important to understand. It's not like it worked great for Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. It didn't work for them either. It didn't work. Newt Gingrich gets a gold star because he got two budgets on time in the last 44 years.
That's the last time they did it.
The best of the best. But we need to have a new budgeting system, and we need to have we need to implement the lessons that we know work in Austin, for instance, and there are other legislative bodies in this country that are very effective. And take some of those lessons and apply them in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Again, it's an election year, and you should find out where your representative stands on those issues. You certainly know where Van Taylor stands, but since it's an election year, I thought I'd get your thoughts for just a minute, and that is there are some obviously concerned about voting in person, but again, I set that aside because I see so many people that go to Walmart, they go to the grocery store, they go to restaurants, but they say we can't vote in person, and even in the most recent special election, since I'm a precinct chairman, I saw the new machines we have where you can actually touch the screen with a Q-tip and you can minimize all of that. But on the other hand, there's been a push, even in the state of Texas, Harris County primarily, to send out these unsolicited mail-in ballots. And around the country, we are seeing more and more push for mail-in ballots. And I wondered, since you are up for re-election and you've been thinking about the election system, what are your thoughts about that?
Sure. Well, you want to make an election system where it's easy to vote and hard to cheat. And that's a good soundbite, and it is what I shoot for. I think it's what everybody I know in elected life wants. They want it to be easy to vote, and they want it to be hard to cheat. And so you want to have a system that works that way. You know, the very first bill that I filed in the Texas legislature was a bill that was carried by myself in the Texas House and Letitia Van Depute, a Democrat in the Texas Senate, carried it and we carried that into law, and that actually allowed our men and women in uniform, who are serving outside their home counties, to request and receive a ballot electronically, and then to mail it in by traditional mail. And it was a very successful piece of legislation. Military voting actually increased 150% of the next election. And so, my thought is, if people are going to risk their lives to fight for our democracy, they should have the opportunity to participate in it. I think that you're going to see a record turnout. You've already seen some very high participation rates throughout the state this year. In the runoff. I think that you're going to see very high turnout. Dr. Fauci tells us that it's safe to vote in person. I believe it is safe to vote in person. And I've heard many people on the other side of the aisle, say, "Hey, it's safe to vote in person. Please go vote." And so, what you don't want to do is you don't want to so radically alter your voting system that you set it up to fail. And so, the voting system is designed for a certain number to go to different polling locations or what have you. And you don't want to so radically alter it that it breaks down and doesn't work. It's a non-functional voting system. And so certainly I'm a believer in making sure that people that can vote by mail are able to do that. And I'll point out that if you're over 65, if you're not going to be in your county of residence for the entire early voting period, and Governor Abbott has actually extended that by a week. So early voting is now an entire week longer in Texas. So instead of being 2 weeks, it's going to be 3 weeks. So you have a very long voting period. Actually, it's less than a month away. October 13th is the first day that Texans can go and vote. And I would encourage people to do their research, do their homework, and go vote early, because I think there'll be fewer lines voting early. I think there'll be a big crush on Election Day. A lot of people put it off, and then they find themselves waiting in line on Election Day. That is unfortunately what happened in the primary in Texas. I stood in front of polling locations across Collin County and was sort of amazed at how few people were voting during the early voting period, and then was disappointed at how many people were waiting in line on Election Day. And it wasn't that was nefarious by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, in Collin County, there were actually very few lines. I should point that out. The county's done a really good job of investing in the technology. We have some of the most advanced voting machines, and we've really done a good job of,
I think so,
running our elections. And you can vote from any polling location anywhere in the county. That's something that Collin County has been a leader on, and that's an investment by the Commissioner's Court, to invest in that voting technology, so people have make it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
Very good. I know you need to go vote, and thank you so very much for representing us, and thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Great to be with you, Kerby.
Again, Representative Van Taylor, if you find yourself saying, I'd like to talk to him, I'd like to know more about some of the constituent services he provides, if you are in his particular district, we have a link to vantaylor.house.gov. You don't even have to remember all that because it's on our website, pointofview.net. And as you go to the website and benefit from some of the articles that we've posted, others that we're going to be talking about, click on that banner that says Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times. You are supporting, of course, not only the program that we're doing today, but when we come back from the break, I'll talk about this flash drive that has some very special election comments from me, as well as information about culture
culture and the economy and education and evangelism, religious liberty and theology and apologetics, and much, much more. So again, give us a call. That number is 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
It would be tragic if Point of View did not exist, because not many programs are targeting areas where we need to learn how to think, where we need to learn how to respond, where we need to learn what our options are for active involvement, even how we can share truth with other people. And because Point of View is relevant, dealing with relevant topics, with real people, presenting real answers, it's right where people are, and it's meeting a very real need. This is a wonderful opportunity you have to literally help the ministry be the most effective that it can be through your gifts, through your financial support. I highly recommend it.
June Hunt. And again, we encourage you to financially help this ministry. This is one of the reasons why twice a year we come to you during our Truth Team to ask for your financial support. And I recognize that you don't give to get, but let's talk about some of the things we do provide to you if indeed you support this ministry. One of those, for those watching online, you can see this flash drive, which has connectors to all sorts of different computers. And in this flash drive, not only includes all sorts of great articles, viewpoint commentaries,
commentaries, and a variety of programs, so more than 100 of these various items, including booklets and Outlook articles from our magazine and viewpoints and programs. Also, a very special election overview that I give to you on video. So there is information there on culture and family, on the economy, on education, which is a new category, on evangelism, which is a new category, on healthcare, which is a new category, one on life issues, which relates to a conversation we're going to have at 2 o'clock, politics, religious freedom, theology, and apologetics. Some of that theology would relate to the conversation we're going to have very soon with Max Lucado. And we make this available to you for your gift of at least $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. Now, some of you might say, well, I couldn't write you a check for $360, but I could give you $1 a day, $30 a month. Some people have said, well, can I just write you a check for $500? Yeah, and you'll still get this as well. So that will work out just fine. And we appreciate the fact that whether you want to give a one-time gift or a regular gift, that is the case. I recognize some of you have been really hit very hard, I guess is a better way to say it, by the economy, and you recognize that you might not be able to help, and we're hoping that others of you might step forward because indeed maybe God has blessed you. And so that's at that level of $1 a day, $30 a month. But we also have mentioned, and I need to maybe go into this in more detail, these booklets that we make available to people that give at least $50 a month. Here's one on capitalism and socialism. We talked about that with Dinesh D'Souza, making your vote count. Of course, we talked about that this week. The politicized culture, racism, criminal justice. Each month, a new one comes out. And so, again, if you could give $50 a month, then you will receive those on a regular basis. And again, you might want to just write a check for $600. I know there's some of you might just say, can I just write you a check for $1,000? Yes, and you'll receive those just as well. So I just wanted to make that very clear because in some respects, we recognize that you do want to support this ministry, but we want to say thank you. And for any gift of any size, of course, we always make available the Outlook magazine. But just before we go to a break, let me mention that one of the articles I've posted relates to the conversation we had yesterday about these wildfires. And the first one has to do with these massive wildfires that have been taking place in California. And this one is actually written by Bjorn Lomborg. Bjorn Lomborg is actually the author of The Skeptical Environmentalist. His new book is called False Alarm. But he says, the massive fires in California are being blamed on climate change. And he says, look, climate change is real, man-made, and something we need to deal with smartly. So he's not what you could call a climate change denier, although I'm afraid some people would call him that just because he doesn't conclude that then we have to actually begin to develop the Green New Deal. But he points out that, if anything, when you look at the past, that in California, before the 1800s, California oftentimes had anywhere from 4 to 11 million acres burned. And so in some respects, it was, if you will, because of the natural burns taking place, clear out all of the tinder that has caused so many of these fires to turn into mega fires. But he points out that by 1900, when fire suppression became the norm, only about 250,000 acres, rather than not even a few million acres, were burned. As I pointed out last time, some of that is due to the fact that everybody says, not in my backyard. Some people say, well, no, that's bad for the environment. No, it's actually very good. And so he points out that Governor Newsom, he says, is right that climate plays a part. But he says experts estimate that really this whole issue of climate change, which he believes in, only plays, he says, a minor part. So even somebody who believes in climate change says, come on, stop saying that it has to do with climate change, because it really has to do with the fact that if nothing else, we have too many areas that have never been through a burn. We have too much brush. We have too much tinder. And so this wood fuel debris just causes these mega fires. And then quotes from Nature Sustainability, which again is an interesting kind of environmental group, but even they estimate that California would be good if about 20% of the areas in California were actually put through a controlled burn, so that we wouldn't have these massive fires that kill so many individuals. And he points out that this idea of climate change, trying to solve the problem, he says, look,
Let's just be real honest. And again, he believes in climate change, okay? But he says even if the entire United States were to cut its emissions tomorrow and the rest of the century, he says the best estimates are that the temperature would still climb by 0.3% Fahrenheit. So the bottom line is, even if we could shut down all of the fossil fuel production in the country, that's your cars, that's the energy that you depend upon and everything else, you're still going to have to face the fact that the temperature is warming because we're coming off of a mini ice age. So anyway, I wanted to post that because over the next couple of weeks, we're going to hear this mantra. The fires are due to climate change. Climate change is due to the fact that Republicans are in office. Climate change and Republicans are in office because you need to defeat Donald Trump. And if you think I'm making that up, here again, I will post this coming from Tom Steyer, who was one of the presidential candidates, and I printed it up so you can see it. What does he say? The only solution we have to stop California wildfires is electing Joe Biden. That's a presidential candidate, an individual that is very bright, by the way, and was very successful in the business world. And I think it just illustrates only so well what is really taking place. But let's take a break. And I was going to play maybe a little bit of some of the comments from our listeners, but I think we'll do that in the next segment anyway for you to hear and for the national audience to hear. But it's a good time for me to mention that, again, you can go to our website, which is pointofview.net, and then you will find some of these articles, including this one from Bjorn Lomborg. This is a man that was an environmentalist for many years, and even now is still an environmentalist, but he is also very skeptical about some of these radical ideas because they simply won't work. He's also president of what's called the Copenhagen Consensus. That's where he brought in some of the best and brightest economists, 3 Nobel Prize winners, to estimate what would be the impact of implementing things like the Green New Deal. It would devastate the economy, and it would make really no difference in terms of the climate. And that's when he started saying, we need to start thinking carefully and clearly about that. So if you'd like to find that article, it's on the website. And as you go there, can I ask you to maybe click on that banner that says Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times? And you'll see a banner that also says Matching Fund. That means your gift of $100 becomes $200, $360 becomes $720. So give us a call, 1-800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Have you seen the new book, In Defense of Looting? Yep, the author says that theft can be a really good thing. Oh, except for theft of the writer's intellectual property. There's a warning against that right inside the book. Steal from thee, not from me. NPR even did an interview with the author, helping spread this mental virus to countless others. Think of Point of View Radio as a vaccine against such things. When you support Kerby Anderson and the rest of the team, you're saying we need unchanging truth in these uncertain times. You're saying that right is right, wrong is wrong. You're providing an alternative to the distortions and outright lies of so many media sources in our day. Don't let fake news go unopposed. Join the Truth Team now by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is the Wednesday edition of Point of View, and over the next couple of hours, we're going to have a chance to talk about a lot of different issues. Just a few minutes, Max Lucado will be with us. I think you're really going to enjoy that conversation. In the past, he's talked about the issue of anxiety, and has had some great material out of his book. His new book, You Are Never Alone, relates to some of the things we talk about in this booklet that I've made available on loneliness, so we'll be talking with him in just a few minutes. But just before we do that, let me mention, first of all, that yesterday was a very significant day, and I thought I'd mention it, and then we'll come back to it more on Thursday, because the individual that we're going to have on Thursday, Gary Bauer, was actually at the signing of this Middle East peace deal, which are called the Abraham Accords. And I love what the Wall Street Journal said, because I agree with them. They said, how would official Washington respond if a Democratic president brokered a peace deal between Israel and two Arab states? And they conclude, well, the papers would be stacked with play-by-plays of how the historic breakthrough was achieved, adulatory profiles of the people in the room, hosannas to the president's strategic vision would flow from think tanks and academia, not only from, of course, there, but Oslo's City Hall, because then you would have an individual that not only would be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, which Barack Obama was and won, but also Donald Trump has been nominated now twice. I don't think he's going to win either of those. And they're called the Abraham Accords because in some respects Abraham is the prophet of the Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and it really brings together the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and perhaps even some other things that will be happening in the future. And so if there's anything that illustrates why we oftentimes come to you and ask you to support Point of View, it's that I think this deserves a lot more attention than it has been receiving in the press. It's a good example of the fact that the press does not like certainly Donald Trump and the things that he's said, and sometimes he's brought it on himself, but, even if he was mild-mannered and gracious like his vice president, Mike Pence, they'd still criticize him and ignore this. But I think it is really telling that the Wall Street Journal, not always a fan of some of the antics of the president, still had to say, if this happened on the other side, it would be something that we'd be hearing about for days, and instead it's been minimized by some of the leaders, or in most cases simply ignored. And so it brings us to one of the reasons why we do what we do this week, and that is it is Truth Team 2020, unchanging truth in uncertain times. Brad Fisk with me, and Brad, if nothing else, the lack of coverage of a very momentous Middle East peace deal illustrates, again, media bias, and I think one of the reasons why people need to think about supporting Point of View.
That's correct, and there is definitely, you have to be blind, deaf, and dumb to not understand that there is a media bias that is very, very active and very strong, and much of the time doesn't tell the truth. And that's really what this is, Kerby. It's a battle for truth, capital T, and we are in a war of truth. And what is truth and what is not. And you can be a part of our truth team by financially giving. We do this a couple times a year. Some friends of the ministry, by the way, have gotten together and said, hey, right now we are going to have an opportunity for you to give with every dollar doubled. So truth team, $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 for the year, and that's a great entry-level gift. And would you consider giving that at 800-347-5151? It's a 2 to 3 minute phone call. We'll have you on and off the air and on your way. 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
I just want to commend you guys on your program. I love listening to you.
I want to say, first of all, that I really enjoyed the Millennial Roundtable, and I love the program altogether. I think Kerby is great, and I really appreciate all of y'all, all that y'all do, and the truth that y'all put out.
I think you guys and gals are more right on about the assessment of this country right now than anything I've heard. You know, I go home and I tell my wife, you've got to hear what they're talking about on the show.
Point of view is actually a lifeline for me, and I'm actually a third-generation point of view listener. I homeschool my girls, and I don't think I could do what I do without point of view on a daily basis. Without ministries like Point of View, we really don't have much hope for the future of our children, our grandchildren. They just really help on a daily basis protect the freedoms that we enjoy today. I can't see a better way to invest in our future than to support Point of View.
Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it. Not only that, I want to encourage everybody listening to donate, because without our donations, I know that y'all won't be able to stay on the air, and it's just, I don't know where we get this kind of information if it wasn't from y'all.
Point of View Truth Team.
Again, if you'd like to give us a call, 800-347-5151. We mentioned yesterday that we have a match. Today we have a match. That's a dollar for dollar match,
yes,
right?
Yes, it is. It sure is. And it's available for you and your gift right now by coming on our website, possibly at pointofview.net to give there. You can, pointofview.net, or you can call us at 800-347-5151. 5151. Join the Truth Team. How many people could join the Truth Team this hour at $1 a day? And you're going to receive a free gift, too.
And so we'll talk about that in just a minute. But again, you have the flash drive. Some of you have been listening. Recognize we have over 100 pieces of material on there, various programs, viewpoints, commentaries, and the rest. And for as little as $1 a day or more, certainly $360 a year, you will receive that. And that is a benefit that comes in along with the Outlook magazine. But I thought I'd put one more on the table before we talk with Max Lucado, because one of the things we like to do, Brad, is talk about things that nobody else in the media is talking about. Okay, yes. I'll give partial credit. Last night, it also appeared on Tucker Carlson. But for those of you that are interested in some of the genetics of the coronavirus, this article came out, and I think very few learned about it until last night when, again, I thought I would bring it up because at least finally somebody covered it, Tucker Carlson. He talked with Dr. Li Ming Yang. She was, of course, over there in Wuhan, and she has looked at the actual genome and said it is very obvious that this was intentionally designed.
Oh, my.
And, of course, the argument has always been, no, this came from nature. It came from the wet market. She says that was just a smokescreen. And so, again, we'll see where this goes because most of the media has not covered it, either because they're convinced she's wrong or actually because they're afraid to get China upset with us. But, facts are facts, and you can look at the genome and recognize that this is not something that would come from nature, according to her. And so as a result, she argues that not only was it intentionally designed, it might have even been intentionally released. And, of course, then Tucker Carlson said, well, how will we know that? And he said, well, we cannot understand their thinking. You'll have to ask them, but they released it. And so, again, there's a good example of a story that unless you watched Tucker Carlson last night, you wouldn't even know existed. Yet if you go to the original paper, which looks at the genome, it looks like it was genetically engineered to target humans. And so, again, you heard it first here on Point of View. We'll see what comes of it.
That's what we do best is give you the news you're not going to hear anywhere else and the information you so desperately need to strengthen your walk with the Lord. 800-347-5151. This is your opportunity to stand with us financially. There can't be a more important time than right now. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Again, she may be wrong, but again, she deserves a hearing, and we gave her a hearing. How many others are? Let's take a break. We're going to be talking with Max Lucado, so you want to call right now before you hear that interview, 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Back in July, one social commentator concluded that even the most prestigious public relations firms could not have come up with a more effective advertising campaign for gun manufacturers than what was happening in the streets. While riots were breaking out in our major cities, protesters were marching with "Defund the Police" signs. Many Americans who never planned to buy a firearm were having second thoughts. A civilized society expects a level of law and order. It depends on police officers to safeguard the peace. The anti-gun viewpoint can't last too long when an anti-cop message is being proclaimed from rioters throwing bricks through windows. And it's hard to feel safe when threatening gangs move through cities and even to suburbs. The demand for guns is greater than anyone would have imagined. The best estimates are that nearly 5 million gun sales have taken place over the last few months. There is no evidence that this surge in gun purchases will abate before November. Mark Smith, CEO of Smith & Wesson, explains that consumer demand for our products during the quarter still exceeded our internal manufacturing capacity levels. The company is now running at maximum capacity. Gun sales would probably be even higher if it weren't for two limitations. The first should be obvious. Demand has exceeded supply in many gun shops. Second, it is nearly impossible in many major cities for law-abiding citizens to purchase a handgun. The Supreme Court decisions of Heller and McDonald were supposed to remove most of those restrictions, but many still remain. Gun control advocates have wanted to reduce the number of firearms in America, but the riots and the "Defund the Police" slogans are actually increasing the number of guns in this country. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Racism, go to viewpoints.info/racism. That's viewpoints.info/racism. Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
Back once again, and we are encouraging you to financially support this ministry, but especially at this time as we've talked about the pandemic and the lockdown. Brad Fisk in studio with us, and we're going to be talking with Max Lucado. And I was just thinking, we produced this booklet on loneliness, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about with Max Lucado. But whether it's that booklet or here's one on Make Your Vote Count and all sorts of other things, those are available to individuals that give at the $50 a month level. Also, of course, we make this flash drive available for people that give at the $1 a day, $30 a month level, and those resources that you can find out about are on the website. But especially loneliness, Brad, I've been talking about this for a quarter of a century. I wrote a book long ago in which it was talking about the various crises we're going to face, and one of the chapters was on the crisis of loneliness. Yep. And I so appreciate the fact that our good friend Max Lucado has a new book that has just come out. You Are Never Alone, Trust in the Miracle of God's Presence. Max Lucado, as you well know, is an author of so many best-selling books. Estimates are about 120 million copies in 54 languages around the world. I remember his first book, On the Anvil, back in 1985, and he's been a good friend ever since. And so, Max Lucado, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
You may be the only person alive who remembers that title. I don't know.
For better or worse, we go back a few years, don't we?
Do you also know Noah?
You and I got together when the Earth's crust was still warm, I suspect. But it has been so great to have you as a friend and to have interviewed you at different times at National Religious Broadcasters, Christian Booksellers Association. And before we get to your new book, let's just talk about over the last couple of months, last time we had you on, you're talking about anxiety. And that's a big issue, too, Max Lucado, which you have not only written about, but you also have provided some great resources on your website. So remind us of what that is, because in addition to this issue of loneliness, which I think is a major crisis in our world today, always has been, exacerbated by the pandemic and lockdown, anxiety goes along with it too, doesn't it?
It does. It does. The mental health, by the way, thank you again. It's so great to talk to you. You're one of the brightest people I know, and it's just an honor to have a few minutes to chat with you. The mental health situation it's mind-blowing. It's so staggering. There is not a positive statistic. Just yesterday, a friend sent one to me that from CNN that said calls to mental health hotlines are up 891%
Yes.
from this time last year. Does that surprise you?
No. And then you see the CDC was saying that those under the age of 25, at least 25.5% of them have contemplated suicide. And so the younger you are, the more likely you are to have thinking that there's just no hope for the future. And usually those are the most hopeful people in America.
I know it. And they are the loneliest. A significant portion of millennials say they have absolutely no friend. Just a couple of, today I'm doing quite a few podcasts and interviews because of the new book, and one of them was with a really nice young fella in Atlanta, I'm guessing 30, 35 years of age. In the last 2 days, 2 of his friends have taken their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, I don't know. First the pandemic came, then the economic concern, and for many, the situation of joblessness, then the racial tension, then the hurricanes, then the fires. And it's just, I don't know, Kerby, I feel like we're just getting whipsawed about from one, and then add to that a contentious presidential election right now. So it's taking its toll on us.
Certainly is. And I might hold up some of the other booklets we have on racism and the politicized culture, because those all add to it. Let me just mention that this book is just out, and we may do a full interview with Max Lucado. He's only going to be on with us for 2 segments today because we're in the midst of our truth team. But again, you are never alone. Trust in the miracle of God's presence and power. We do have a link there in case you want to get it in hardback or Kindle. And no doubt, since it's now been out 2 days or so, you should be able to find it in your local bookstore, but we make it easy for you to find. And in some respects, you take us through the Gospel of John and help us begin to understand that we're not alone, and yet loneliness is just a chronic problem in our society today.
Chronic problem. I think your word was right, exacerbated by the COVID. It's not that loneliness wasn't there, it's just that COVID has made it all the more obvious. So it's taking its toll on us, obviously. And I wrote this book pre-pandemic, although I did finish it last spring when we were in the early weeks of the lockdown and beginning to see some of the consequences of loneliness. One of the statistics you'll find interesting, since you're in the Dallas area, is the Parkland Hospital. I think that's probably one of your largest hospital providers, right?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
In the Dallas area. They were trying to disentangle their clogged up ER system. Again, this is pre-pandemic. They were trying to figure out why their ERs were always so crowded. And they made a list of their repeat attenders, I guess you could call them, people who were making regular visits to the ER. And they determined it was less physical and more emotional.
Mm-hmm.
That when they interviewed these individuals, they were finding out that the reason they were coming back to the ER was because they're lonely. They're lonely. And when they would go to an ER, at least somebody would say, "How are you doing? Tell us what's bothering you." They would receive some form of attention. and it was clogging up the ER system. So it manifests itself in a variety of ways.
It sure does.
There are many books, as you and I both know, on developing friendships, where I think you and I would come at this differently is we would certainly add that vertical part before the horizontal part. The vertical relationship between a person and God is so essential. And that relationship is what empowers us to have healthy relationships with others. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then the second command is to love your neighbor as yourself. So I think implied in that is begin by making sure that you get who God is. You understand who he is. And let that relationship, that vertical relationship, sustain you, stabilize you, be your source of energy and strength. Then you will be in a position to turn horizontally and build relationships that can sustain you. And if you happen to be in a situation where you're cut off from those relationships that you so treasure, it'll be difficult, but it won't be devastating.
And I love what you're saying, too, about that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we're going to come to a break, but I just, I look at some of these secular books that I read on the pursuit of loneliness, or even Robert Putnam's famous book, Bowling Alone, and they all give you kind of the horizontal look, but that's what I love about your book. You give us the vertical look as well. And just since we're going to a break, Brad, why don't we just remind people that as we have a chance after the break to continue our conversation with Max Lucado, we also are encouraging people to support this ministry.
We are. It's Truth Team Week this week, Monday through Friday, and right now we are very excited because we have a match challenge on the table. Every dollar you give right now will be doubled. And join the Truth Team, won't you? It's a minimum of $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 for the year, and you'll join the Truth Team. 1-800-347-5151. Of course, a gift of any amount would be most appreciated. And if you're in that unemployment kind of situation right now, you know what? Let us know how to pray for you, and don't feel obligated to give. The number, for those of you that can and should and would, 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 5151. You can also give on the website, pointofview.net.
Going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk with Max Lucado about a couple of issues. First of all, to realize that Jesus is walking with you. Sometimes we feel like, does God really even care? Is God even here? What about some of the challenges you face in terms of the issue of grace? And also, when we talk about that, the miracle of God's presence. How do we practice the presence of God? That's a very important issue. Famous book is, by the way. And how can we really depend upon God's power? So that is all part of this new book. I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation that we're going to have, but also I know you're going to enjoy the book. 240 pages published by our good friends at Thomas Nelson. And if you find yourself saying, yeah, I'd like to read that book, well, I would encourage you to do so. And it is now out and just been out for a couple of days. And so we have information about it on our website. We also have information of Max Lucado's website. I want to come back and talk about some of those great resources that he has been making available all these years, and especially through his church. So we'll talk about that as well. But the book, You Are Never Alone, Trust in the Miracle of God's Presence and Power. But we need to hear from you. And as we go to a break, that's a perfect time for you to call, because you won't miss the interview we're doing with Max Lucado. So give us a call, 800-347-5151. We need your pledge, and you don't have to have all the money right now. We're just encouraging you to join with us. And if you would like to find out more about the book and also make your gift online, it is at pointofview.net. We'll continue our conversation with our good friend Max Lucado right after this.
2020 was supposed to be the year of sharper vision, but from the smoke of wildfires to the smoke of burning cities and a seemingly endless flood of concern over coronavirus, let's just say that almost no one is seeing clearly right now what our future will be. But when you have fuzzy vision, you get glasses. You do something to help you see the world as it really is. When you see chaos in our land, you do something, you vote, you anchor yourself in unchanging truth in uncertain times. You can provide that for countless people over the coming week by joining with many others as members of the Point of View Truth Team. The something you can do right now is become a monthly partner in our work. Don't settle for fuzziness. Provide our land with clarity by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151.
Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kerby Anderson.
You know, as we're back, let me just mention the fact that you may be feeling like life is depleted. You may be struggling with this issue of loneliness we've talked about. One of the things we want to do here at Point of View is give life-giving words of encouragement. We want to let you know about life-giving resources like this one, You Are Never Alone by Max Lucado. And Brad, that's one of the reasons why we encourage people to listen to Point of View, and even this week during our Truth Team 2020, why we encourage people to support this ministry.
We do indeed, and what a more topic that just can't be more current of what's happening here, and it's really tragic. And you can be a part of giving us a voice to go to the future by supporting us financially. 800-347-5151. Remember, there's a dollar-for-dollar match on the table. Every dollar you give will be doubled. Go to pointofview.net and join the Truth Team.
Max Lucado, You Are Never Alone. Trust in the miracle of God's presence and power. Before we talk about the book again, Max, I know that you have always encouraged our listeners to support Point of View. What would you tell to some of our listeners right now as we're talking about your book?
Well, you know, it is a hard time to think through the many issues that we're wrestling with as a society, as individuals. And, you know, my wife and I sometimes watch the news, and I say to her, "Honey, I don't know what to think. I don't know how to interpret what he just said or she just said." And your ministry is extremely helpful in helping us frame a Christian worldview. I've respected that you're always careful not to tell people how to think. I'm sorry, not to tell people what to think, but you tell people how to think. You remind us of our values. You remind us of what is essential, and then you leave it up to us to try to filter the difficult changes or questions of the day through our Christian worldview. And so that's what I admire about you, my friend, and continue to admire about what you're doing.
Let's, if we can, talk about how maybe we can actually have God's presence in our life, because that's kind of the subtitle of your book. Yeah. And it's really important because I think we, in this fast-paced, frenetic lifestyle, we don't necessarily know how to maintain God's presence in our life. What can you suggest that we might do?
Well, again, right in the topic of worldview is this idea of understanding that we live in a spiritual world. Although many people and thought leaders call it a secular world, it's just simply not. It's not. It's a spiritual world. By that we mean that there is a God. And according to Scripture, this God loves us and he cares about us. And he has spoken to us through the prophets and through the preachers. And that he also has spoken to us through his Son. And that he has sent his Holy Spirit to indwell every person who calls upon him and is saved through Christ. So this is a great revelation. In fact, if we knew nothing more than that, we can honestly say, "Okay, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I've got God's help. I've got God's strength." But even more, we have the promise of Jesus to not only be present, but to be an ever-present strength in our days of trouble and struggle. And so I believe just two or three things can change a person's paradigm. Number one, be open to this spiritual ideas. Be open to the idea that God cares about you. Number two, open your mouth in prayer. Be one who always talks to God, seeking him, looking for him. Every particular event can be a moment in which you and God draw closer together. And then open your mind to Scripture. God speaks to us in a variety of ways, but the primary mode of communication is through his Word. The Holy Spirit takes the Word of God and turns it into a sword that can cut to what to us are impossible spots to reach, the coming together of the heart and the soul, the joint and the marrow. And so we can receive these teachings. In a book like the one I just wrote, I'm just inviting people to look again at the miracles in the Gospel of John. Mm-hmm. And let each one of them give you a message about how God is close to you and how he'll help you through what you're facing.
One of the keys, of course, in your book is the idea of the hope of John and the hope of the book and all the rest. But certainly as a pastor who teaches at Oak Hills Church in San Antonio and an individual that's written so many different books, I think it's important to recognize how important hope is, but our kind of typical definition of hope is not the biblical definition of hope. I mean, when we were in school, sometimes we say, well, I hope I passed that test, but that's not the kind of hope we find in the Scriptures, is it?
You know, the hope in Scripture is a hope that is based on the historical presence of Christ in the world, the vacant tomb of Christ, and the authoritative Word of God. So when we place our hope, hope becomes an anchor, not just an idle possibility. It's an anchor. You know, when I go out in my little fishing boat on the South Texas Lake, I anchor it so I don't float away, so I can fish. And when we anchor ourselves to the Word of God and the workings of God, that's what we're doing. We're not just. And again, you're right. There might be somebody who says, "Well, I hope God will hold me." Well, that's not what we're talking about. It's a faith. It's a deep-rooted belief that God's going to do what is right and that He's going to hold on to us through these stormy times.
Just before I let you go, we have a link to maxlucado.com, and there are some other resources that are there, as there were when we talked about the issue of anxiety. And I've always appreciated the fact that you have a podcast, you know, the encouraging word. You have all sorts of issues on hope and all the other kinds of resources. So talk about what's available when people land at your website, because we have a link there, and I would hope people would use it.
And we've gotten even more aggressive, as I know you have, during the COVID calamity, because knowing that people are cut off from attending church, many are, or many have been, maybe cut off from small group activities, and so they just need all the encouragement they can get. So I post messages 3 or 4 times a week that are 8 to 10 minutes in length. People can go to, and also we have the podcast to which people can subscribe. We have a variety of blogs that I've written through the years, and then, of course, access to all the sermons that I've preached and many sermons that my friends have preached. I just began a series this last weekend on the book of Esther, and I'm excited about trying to hear God during a time in which it seems like God is just not shouting but whispering, as He did through the book of Esther. So I'm very confident there's something that would encourage people if they'll go to maxlucado.com.
Also, you have an online Bible study on this book, which will begin next month, and so people can sign up for that. And great material.
Kirby, you know more than I do. I've forgotten all about that online Bible.
Oh, I try to read, as you well know. I've read a few of your books, and I certainly read your website, so I can kind of get a sense of how we can put you in the best light, and it is always easy to do because of such a gifted communicator that you are. So thank you once again for joining us.
You're too kind. I'm just sorry I'm not there in person, but it's just great to hear your voice.
Next time we'll get you in person if we can, and again...
Yeah, we'll be able to get on the road again, hopefully.
That'll be great. Again, the book is entitled You Are Never Alone, and I think you will really enjoy all the great material that we have there. And if you've appreciated Max Lucado and all the interviews we do to really encourage your heart, that's, again, why we come to people that are listening to Point of View. Our listeners right now are supporting this ministry, and we are dependent upon their gifts so that we can continue bringing these programs to them.
Do you know we've been on the air for close to 5 decades? We're coming up on that, and it's amazing to me to step back. We are the oldest ongoing talk show anywhere in the world. And I think that's very exciting. And it's another reason we're asking you to give. People have given before you. We're asking you now to step up and pay it forward yet again with your most generous gift that you have at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. You can also go to the website at pointofview.net and give. Pointofview.net. And we have some special gifts.
I might just mention that, again, this flash drive, which I'm holding up right now, is one that you can use to actually download all sorts of viewpoint commentaries, various articles, some of the booklets, and these special interviews with some of the people we're talking about, and it's available for your gift of $1 a day or more, $360 a year.
By the way, there's something I was surprised yesterday when I listened to it in the morning yesterday. There is an interview with you talking about the whole political scene right now and what's going on. You can't get this it's just an incredible overview that Kerby does, and it's only on this thumb drive. You have to get the thumb drive to hear and see it, but it's incredible information about what's coming up politically. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Every dollar is doubled, Kerby. Every dollar doubled.
Again, I would encourage you to give us a call right now, because a little bit later we're going to be doing some other interviews. So 800-347-5151. Of course, the website, pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio, and we air Point of View on AFR, American Family Radio. Folks, Kerby Anderson and the team there deserve your financial support during this time. They don't ask a lot, but when they do ask, they need your financial support to make the ministry whole, to keep promoting the gospel and the truth about what's going on in our country. We consider them kindred spirits and partner in ministry at Point of View with us here at American Family Radio. So if you would, write them a check, give them a donation with your credit card, whatever you can do to help them keep the cause of Christ before the public on their radio program, Point of View.
Tim Wildman with American Family Association. I thought you would appreciate hearing from him. Brad with me. And let me just mention, next hour we're going to have Don Blythe. But just before we get into some of these other issues, one of the articles I've posted, it's the 4th article, 3 protesters charged after harassing diners in viral video. Brad, one of the things that people ask me from time to time is, I see these people breaking windows, hurting police officers, some people actually killing people. Have they been charged? And in the past, we've talked about that, and the Attorney General Bill Barr is actually going to have some people go away for a long time. But if you've watched some of these videos, you've also seen some of these really obnoxious people that have been accosting diners who are sitting outside. And so the question is always, well, what happens to them? And so I just thought I'd post this one just to mention in passing that there's one video that captures these confrontations that took place inside a McDonald's, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
They were accosting one of these employees who's, by the way, African-American, but just showing him out. I can't even tell you what they said, because if I said it on the air, the FCC would be very upset with me, of course. Then you have another one where you have these individuals that are accosting this elderly couple. They're doing all sorts of hand signs. You can figure out what that is. And then you had one protester that actually identifies as Kraft and identifies as neither male nor female. And you might saw that video, because then goes up and chugs down this elderly couple's beer. Anyway, there are a couple of people that said, if they were there, I'm not sure they would walk away uninjured. And yet the bottom line is, I just thought I'd post this because some people say, well, what's happening to these people? Well, in this particular case, they're being charged with unruly conflict and probably will pay a fine. Some of the others that have actually killed people or harmed people, they may be going away for some time. So anyway, I just wanted to cover some of that, because it's one of those issues that, again, the press does not cover. They show the incident, and then they never tell you what happened in the rest of it. And I just want to be, as Paul Harvey used to say, tell you the rest of the story. These people are being charged. Some of them are going away, especially if they've actually crossed state lines, incited riots, and killed people. They'll be in maximum security in federal penitentiaries, maybe for the rest of their lives.
And they need to be. And people break the law, they need to suffer the consequences. And that's been disturbing to our country, I think, to see the violence, the senseless violence going on. And again, Point of View is standing in the forefront. We are looking both backwards, sideways, and forward to make sure you have the latest truthful information, not made up news, but real news. And you can be a part of the truth team right now at 800-347-5151. Kerby, we got a match challenge, and I'm watching it move along here. And it would really be good to see about another $3,000 at least between now and the top of the hour. Could you give us a call right now? There's an urgency here as we get this match challenge cared for. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. You can also give online cheerfully at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
Point of View Truth Team.
Point of View is a part of my daily life, and I know of no other radio program that helps its listeners to develop, articulate, and then defend a biblical worldview as successfully as yours does. For those reasons, I consider it an honor to be able to support Point of View financially, and I would encourage all of your listeners, both young and old, to prayerfully consider doing the same.
I just turned your program on, and I want to just let you know I was working in an abortion clinic when abortion first became legal, and I thought I was helping women. And the Lord showed me in a very powerful way, as He removed the veil from me, what exactly I'd been involved in. And I am proof of forgiveness. And I want to just let you know how much I appreciate just getting the truth out.
I really appreciate your program. I don't get to listen to it every day because I have to work, but it's really a blessing to me and to all of us.
My husband and I take so many extra precautions to guard our children, and it is a huge effort on the part of Christian parents to do that. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
I just appreciate all you guys do. I mean, I learned so much, and it's amazing what you teach that I say to other people, and they look at me like, where did you hear that? So I appreciate you guys. So thank you for all you do.
Point of View Truth Team.
Let me just give you a preview that next hour we're going to be talking about this threat that appeared in the Atlantic. There we go again, saying that mass unrest and political violence will continue if Trump wins. It's almost like vote Biden or else you're going to get riots. And that is the first article which we have posted. It's also in an email that's going out shortly. So I wanted you to understand that's coming up. And then also be talking about the pro-life ministry and resources that are available there and a variety of other things in the next hour. But we have, before the top of the hour, a need to kind of clean up some of the match money that we have on the table, just sitting on the table right now.
We have a deadline. We're down to about 5 minutes to go, and we need to get 10 of you that would come in with a Truth Team level of $1 a day and be a part of what we're doing here financially. You could give $1,000, $500 single gift, a $20 single gift. Every bit helps, and it will be doubled dollar for dollar. So it's so critical. Remember, you're going to get that flash drive for anybody who gives $1 or more a day, $30 a month or more, and it's got that interview with Kerby Anderson all about the political status quo that's going on right now, and you can't get this anywhere else. This interview with Kerby is only exclusively found on the thumb drive. So call and get yours today. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can also give at pointofview.net. Pointofview.net, looking for 10 of you to join at the Truth Team level in the next 5 minutes. Please, let's not leave any of that match money behind.
Let me just mention, too, these booklets that we've talked about before, we make those available for people that give $50 a month.
It's a subscription.
Although some people might say, well, actually, I probably could write you a check for $1,000. We've gotten a few of those, and you'd still get these. So it doesn't have to be $50 a month. It just has to be that amount. And we talked about the one on loneliness, the one on racism, politicized culture, making your vote count. And I really want to get those in the hands of individuals, the ones that we've written in the past, others coming out shortly. And it's just one way, again, to not only thank you for your gift, but also to educate you. And that's really what we're about.
Yep,
and when people are doing this, your gift is helping impact the culture. You're helping us produce the radio program, to produce the videos. Matter of fact, we've got the iVoter video guide up there right now. My Viewpoints commentary today on the Second Amendment moment. You're finding more and more people buying handguns than ever before. We'll talk about that. And so, again, I want you to understand that you're really helping move forward a culture, addressing many of those issues. And we'll come back and talk about the riots and some of the political campaign in just a minute. But this is a perfect time to call. I know some of you are waiting because you just want to hear Max Lucado, but now that he's not on, you can give us a call. That number is 800-347-5151. We need, 10 people, you said?
10 people checking in, a little less than that. A couple people have just checked in.
Perfect.
So, but about 8 of you checking in at $1 a day. 800-347-5151. And on the net?
Pointofview.net. Let's take a break. We have a lot more to cover. We will do so right after this.
Have you seen the new book, In Defense of Looting? Yep, the author says that theft can be a really good thing. Oh, except for theft of the writer's intellectual property. There's a warning against that right inside the book. Steal from thee, not from me. NPR even did an interview with the author, helping spread this mental virus to countless others. Think of Point of View Radio as a vaccine against such things. When you support Kerby Anderson and the rest of the team, you're saying we need unchanging truth in these uncertain times. You're saying that right is right, wrong is wrong. You're providing an alternative to the distortions and outright lies of so many media sources in our day. Don't let fake news go unopposed. Join the Truth Team now by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
This hour we're going to get into a couple of other very important issues and also have another guest in a minute, but I thought just a minute ago talked to some of the people answering the phone, and they said, we're not sure we got all the phone calls. So if by chance you tried to call in right now, because we had a rush, which I love and appreciate, and you were on hold or you didn't get through, this would be a good time to call.
Yeah, the lines are open back up. We just checked it. 800-347-5151. For those of you just joining us new, it's Truth Team Week, and we are helping to raise our budget to continue on doing what we do best, and that is to serve you. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151.
In just a few minutes, we're going to be talking with our guests, but before we do so, those of you that have been a donor to Point of View in the past will receive an email from me. Maybe you've already received it, and it's based upon this article that we found, and it's really disturbing. Essentially, I can summarize it by vote for Joe Biden or get riots. That's kind of the argument. Now, this is written by Nathaniel Blake, and this was actually in the Federalist, but he's quoting from an article that appeared in the Atlantic. If that sounds familiar, of course, that was the one that had the hit piece on the president. Anyway, Shamad Hamid is arguing that really that if indeed Donald Trump wins, he predicts mass unrest and political violence across American cities. Now, he does it in sort of way to sort of suggest that I don't necessarily think this is a good idea, but the fact that he suggests it, you can just imagine the possibility that that would happen.
Kerby, do you believe it could happen?
Well, of course. I mean, almost anybody that I know right now says that, first of all, the rioting and violence have continued. I mean, I can point you to some cities where that's taking place. So to think that come whenever we finally declare a winner, which I'm not sure is going to be the night of November 3rd, but when we ever do, that there are going to be people going, oh, okay, that's fine. I don't think that's happening. And in the article, he argues that if anything, some of these cities, and he mentions Portland, Seattle, and others are that, and he says he's truly worried that his predictions won't come true, but that doesn't really absolve him of even suggesting that idea. And he suggests that if nothing else, in the past, his argument was that liberals had enough trouble trying to accept the results of the 2016 election. And as a result, what did we get? Well, we got these conspiracy theories. You know, it was due to the Russians, which not only allowed them to sort of kneecap, as he says, the Trump administration, but also gave at least some of the people that disagreed with Donald Trump a reason for why that happened, that he just cheated his way into the White House. It also allowed them to just not try to understand, why would somebody vote for Donald Trump? Instead of trying to understand the voters, just completely dismiss them. And so this is, again, one of those issues. And then it goes on to talk about the criticism that has come from especially the radical left about the Electoral College and those kinds of things. And so in some respects, you might say, as he finishes this piece, Nathaniel Blake, these threats of political violence may be empty, even if they mean them, but some are going to probably riot anyway, and as a result, you're going to probably have to deal with the things I just talked about. The president and the current attorney general have had to actually put federal troops into some of these cities to try to restore order. So as much as I hate to admit it, This individual that wrote for The Atlantic may be right, that indeed with possible re-election of Donald Trump, you may get more riots.
You know, you illustrate a very important point about point of view, and that is this. You know, this isn't just about an election of a president. There's a lot more at stake here in our culture, in our future, our grandkids. I can't help but to go back to my 24 grandchildren and think about what kind of a life are they going to have. And the answer, part of that answer, is tune in to Point of View and listen to Kerby Anderson day in and day out. And he brings the guests to the microphone and he makes a difference. So Kerby, thank you for that daily servanthood that you have. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
Oh, I thank God for what you're doing on Point of View. You guys have more influence across this country than I believe any of them in terms of tackling the issues and getting the truth out to Americans. It's getting to the point where truth just is bottled up on every hand. Every time you turn around, there's another big bottleneck against truth. I hope your listeners realize what Point of View is doing and supports Point of View in every possible way you can.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
I always wanted to give because I thought that Point of View really brings a lot of things in out here in the open that you don't hear anywhere else. And I knew when I was hearing on there, well, I could count on it being something that you could check into it and the proof would be there. You know, I didn't have to wonder, well, where did they make that stuff up from? I just know that it's going to be facts. That's what I call true journalism and putting the stuff out. I really think that's great.
Point of View Truth Team.
You know, that caller was talking about truth journalism, and sometimes people say, where did you get that? And that's one of the reasons why this is the first article, you know, vote Biden or get riots, because if people receive the email, which we have going out, just to remind people that we are in the midst of Truth Team, and they might see these quotes, they might go, wait a minute, where did you get that? So that is why if you get that email and you kind of wrinkle your brow a little bit or you go, I'm not so sure about that, the entire 3-page article is the first article today. So you'll see a correlation between the viewpoint material, the editorials that we talk about, and the email, and this article that we've posted here on Point of View. And as you just pointed out a minute ago, we're in the midst of Truth Team, and maybe we need to explain what we're doing here.
I think that'd be good. For those of you just tuning in, we have Truth Team going on. We do this 2 weeks out of the year. We come to you because we are listener-supported radio. And that means you, the listener, need to support us to stay on the air as you've done so faithfully for decades. And what happens is we're asking you to give, especially at that $1 a day entry level. It's $360 for the year. We've got some free gifts for you for joining the Truth Team at that level or more of $1 a day. And we ask you simply to pray and obey. See what God would have you do. And we do want to acknowledge some of you we know are out of work or having financial difficulties. Hey, this isn't for you right now, and that's okay. You know what? We'll pray for you if you let us know how to pray for you at 800-347-5151. And I was just informed a moment ago that there's another match on the table.
Okay, good.
One cleared up last time. We have a match challenge. So right now, every dollar will be doubled. Every dollar doubled. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or you can also give online, pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
If you listen to Point of View, you know how often we talk about pro-life issues and how do we make the case for the pro-life issues. Well, Don Blythe will be with us and we'll be talking about that. But as we go to a break, before you miss any of that interview, that's why you want to, if anything, give us a call. 800-347-5151. Of course, pointofview.net. And when we come back, we'll talk about that and give you some more information and to really equip and empower you to make a difference, because ultimately your gift will help us impact the culture.
And it's times 2. Every dollar doubled. Don't forget, give right now strategically.
We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Back in July, one social commentator concluded that even the most prestigious public relations firms could not have come up with a more effective advertising campaign for gun manufacturers than what was happening in the streets. While riots were breaking out in our major cities, protesters were marching with "Defund the Police" signs. Many Americans who never planned to buy a firearm were having second thoughts. A civilized society expects a level of law and order. It depends on police officers to safeguard the peace. The anti-gun viewpoint can't last too long when an anti-cop message is being proclaimed from rioters throwing bricks through windows. And it's hard to feel safe when threatening gangs move through cities and even to suburbs. The demand for guns is greater than anyone would have imagined. The best estimates are that nearly 5 million gun sales have taken place over the last few months. There is no evidence that this surge in gun purchases will abate before November. Mark Smith, CEO of Smith & Wesson, explains that consumer demand for our products during the quarter still exceeded our internal manufacturing capacity levels. The company is now running at maximum capacity. Gun sales would probably be even higher if it weren't for two limitations. The first should be obvious. Demand has exceeded supply in many gun shops. Second, it is nearly impossible in many major cities for law-abiding citizens to purchase a handgun. The Supreme Court decisions of Heller and McDonald were supposed to remove most of those restrictions, but many still remain. Gun control advocates have wanted to reduce the number of firearms in America, but the riots and the "Defund the Police" slogans are actually increasing the number of guns in this country. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Racism, go to viewpoints.info/racism. That's viewpoints.info/racism. Point of View Truth Team, unchanging truth in uncertain times.
Back once again, we're going to be talking about the issue of abortion. By the way, I might just mention this booklet, A Biblical View on Abortion. It's amazing. One of the things, Brad, that I've passed on to individuals that said they wanted to get multiple copies of this because they'd never seen it before, and I'm thinking, really, some of these arguments that we've been making for decades.
That's
but
right.
Nevertheless, I recognize that every generation is confronting some of these social issues for the first time. And so this booklet on abortion, or the one we just talked about a few minutes ago with, of course, Max Lucado on loneliness, those are available for people to give at the $50 a month level.
Okay.
I know one of our callers a minute ago was saying, what level? I didn't realize there were more than one level. Well, there's the level that you, of course, get the flash drive, which is at the $1 a day or more, $30 a month or $360 a year. But if you join at the $50 level, you get the flash drive and the booklets. So that's a second level that I guess some people don't realize exists. And, of course, you can find all of that at the website, pointofview.net.
That's right. That thumb drive is really, really important to have, because there's tons of information on there, including your interview about the political scene right now that you can get nowhere else but on that thumb drive. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. And you can also give at pointofview.net, pointofview.net. And remember, every dollar is doubled right now.
Point of View Truth Team.
You know, I can't go to Washington. I can't do those things. So the only way that I can help is the way that God has provided for me, and to give some of that back to you guys. So, like you said, partnering with Point of View, because, you know, you can't do it alone. Thank you very much for what you guys do. Believe me, it's a needed thing, and I just hope everybody certainly would get on the bandwagon with you.
I can't afford not to support you. Point of View gives me a voice, and I just appreciate you. And I've been here listening for years, so I thank you, and I do. Again, I said I can't afford not to support you because I want you to keep going.
I'm 25 years old, and I started listening to Point of View about 4 years ago, and it has changed the way that I think and the way that I view the world around me.
My husband and I are your supporters. We just really appreciate the show and the people you bring on.
Point of View Truth Team.
Back once again, let me introduce our guest who's also been a listener for many years. Don Blythe has a ministry for really 3.5 decades and has been really speaking the issue of truth into the culture, speaking the issue of life into the culture. Project Truth is his ministry, goes on college campuses and really confronts students with the pro-life message. Also has been protesting outside of high school abortion clinics and a number, been arrested a couple of times as well. And Don Blythe, you're such a good friend. I would imagine most of our listeners know about your ministry, but I appreciate the fact you're willing to join us again here on Point of View.
I was thrilled that you gave me a call and wanted me to come up and update you a little bit. I love you, Kerby, and I love Point of View. So I just, you guys are a breath of fresh air whenever you're on the air. And right now in California, we need lots of fresh air.
Yes, you do. So. Oh, it's unbelievable what's going on in California. And Brad, one of the things that Don says every once in a while is after we do a really interesting book interview, he says, well, you cost me more because I'm going to have to go out and buy another book.
That's right. That's exactly true.
And it's good to have you on with Max Lucado because we love Max Lucado. We love you as well. And every time I make it out to California, I make it a point to see you. And, of course, you've been in studio with us as well. But give us an update. A lot of our listeners say, well, you got this booklet on abortion. Oh, I know it all. No, you don't. You have done an effective and a very effective job over the years of really making the case for life. And that is even more important now because I don't know if you watched the Democratic National Convention. They didn't say anything about abortion because I think they recognize they're sort of on the run. But if you look at the platform for the Democratic National Party, they essentially are endorsing abortion all the way up to birth, which is even more radical than what we had during the days of Bill Clinton that talked about wanting abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. Have you noticed that at all?
Oh, absolutely. And I was totally pumped and inspired about the Republican convention. I know you guys talked a lot about that on the air. But, I mean, you couldn't make it more obvious which side you should be on as a Christian. And so in my ministry, you know, in fact, I just left just a few minutes ago. I left from the walkway into the Family Planning Associate Abortion Clinic here in Fresno. And it's a clinic that has killed over 2 million, the abortion industry of the Family Planning Associates. There's 20 abortion clinics. They've killed over 2 million babies in their decades of being open. And it's heartbreaking. But lately we saved a couple babies.
I think I lost you there. But if nothing else, a good illustration of what he's been doing. And, of course, lots of times when he talks about saving some of those babies, what's been so encouraging is later on, then somebody will introduce him to this young boy or girl and said, you save that baby. So that is just a kind of impact.
That gave me goosebumps.
Yes. Well, and we're just getting Don back again. I think he was on a cell phone because he was just outside of that clinic. So we'll talk about that with him in just a minute. But it's a good illustration of one of the things that we do. In my particular piece here on a biblical view of abortion, I talk about, of course, biblical arguments against abortion, but then I get into medical arguments against abortion and legal arguments against abortion, philosophical arguments against abortion, and many times I've done some debates. I can remember some where we've debated abortionists, and I will start out not with the biblical arguments, but I'll just start out with the medical arguments, and then I'll work on my way to some of the other arguments. And because I recognize that my audience is not Christian, if you start with the biblical arguments, I think you're pretty much much there. But even so, we can say that even if you reject the Bible, there are all sorts of very good arguments for life. And that's the good news, is that the younger you are, the more likely you are to be pro-life. And we are seeing in this case, the Democratic National Convention, I don't think the word abortion was ever mentioned. Of course, we had Abby Johnson on the other day who actually gave this really powerful message about life.
It may not be mentioned right now, but what will happen on November 4th
if
Biden wins? So what could happen in the future if we elect the wrong president?
Well, I think we have Don Blythe back, and so as soon as we get him, we'll get his comments. But let me start off by saying that obviously you have both with Joe Biden, a former vice president, as well as Senator Kamala Harris, really a much more extreme view of abortion than you got even just a few decades ago. And Don, don't you see that kind of same almost extreme view that is now being promoted? You live in the state of California, whether it's your governor, your attorney general, many members of Congress, they're taking a much more extreme position than I think even people that call themselves pro-life would be comfortable with. What have you found?
Oh, yeah, we found the same thing. And what we really found, too, is that when we talk to people who are kind of on the fence, they're troubled by the extreme views that they're hearing because they've never heard it like that before. And so they're troubled by that. And they're troubled in the same way as when I tell them, you know, I'm out in front of an abortion clinic where they do abortions up to 24 weeks. They kind of look at me and go, what? What? I mean, I've never heard that. So I'm surprised at how naive people tend to be about the Democratic Party and abortion and stuff. I think all these years that we've been educating people about that, some people just aren't getting it. And so that's why I love the fact that this is 2020. What a great illustration of how it's time for you to get your vision back and get your discernment back and really make some heartfelt decisions about what you're going to believe and who you're going to stand with when it comes to these issues. And I appreciated John MacArthur saying that, you know, a Christian can't vote for Joe Biden and Harris. 20 years ago, you wouldn't hear most Christians talk like that. And but now the leadership are saying it's so obvious, the difference between one side and the other. You have an obligation to God to stand on the side of righteousness as much as you can. And so we're seeing a lot of people, even at the coming in and out of the abortion clinics, who are actually, a lot of them are talking to us, and a lot of them are listening.
Sure. Let's take a break, and I want to get into that story because I want to hear a little bit more about that. But we go into a break, and this would be a great time for people to give us a call because then they won't miss the interview we're doing with Don Blythe.
How would you like to double your donation to Point of View right now? You can do that by calling 1-800-347-5151. Come in at that $1 a day level or more, won't you? But any gift, any size, single or monthly. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
And we'll come back and talk a little bit more about some of the conversation with people on the abortion clinic and some of the things people are learning about pro-life. 1-800-347-5151. We'll be back right after this.
2020 was supposed to be the year of sharper vision, but from the smoke of wildfires to the smoke of burning cities and a seemingly endless flood of concern over coronavirus, let's just say that almost no one is seeing clearly right now what our future will be. But when you have fuzzy vision, you get glasses. You do something to help you see the world as it really is. When you see chaos in our land, you do something, you vote, you anchor yourself in unchanging truth in uncertain times. You can provide that for countless people over the coming week by joining with many others as members of the Point of View Truth Team. The something you can do right now is become a monthly partner in our work. Don't settle for fuzziness. Provide our land with clarity by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team. and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, Truth Team 2020, and we have in studio with us Brad Fisk, and by phone, Don Blythe. And I might just mention again, we have information about Project Truth, his ministry, and also a link to At the Well Ministries. It's all available at our website, pointofview.net. Just before we get back to that conversation, Brad, I think we should remind our listeners that we still have a match on the table, don't we?
We do. Point of View has been against abortion from the very first broadcast on the very first first day. And we have not changed from that position at all up to now. I can't think of a better reason, ladies and gentlemen, for you to pick up the phone and for you to be a part of what's going on here at Point of View for the coming 6 months to a year. We need the funding to keep doing what we're doing. Please help us do that. Every dollar you give will be doubled. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Don, let me come back to you, because one of the things we've talked about is it is a very politicized culture, but you were just sharing a minute ago, and I wanted to give you some more time to do so, that you have people going in and out of the abortion clinics that you talk to, and there seems to be an openness. Tell us more if you might.
There are a certain number of people that are troubled by what's going on in their lives, and it's opening them up to starting to think a little bit more about, what's my life all about, and why is everything collapsing around us? People are seeing it. That doesn't mean all of them are. Some people are more angry at us, and some people just blow us off. But there are people who are willing to listen to the gospel and listen to the truth that we have for them. And so we've seen, a lot of different changes in people. A lot of the things that are going on in the world, there are people who are going into abortion clinics sometimes who probably wouldn't have gone into the abortion clinic if it wasn't for all the turmoil that's going on in the world and scaring them, and they don't want to have another child. So we have to walk through that with some of them. But it's an interesting dynamics. We've had to change a little bit about how we do our sidewalk counseling, because half of the abortions now are chemical abortions, and so we're having to readjust some of our persuasion, because they'll say, well, I'm here for birth control, and that's just a code word for I'm here to get the abortion pill because I don't think there's something inside me. And so we've had to make some adjustments in how we talk to them and get them to realize that a chemical abortion is still child sacrifice at home. So you're sacrificing your baby at home, and you're going to deliver. The first pill kills the baby. The second pill actually puts you into contractions, and you deliver a dead baby either into the toilet or on your bed. And so we're having to kind of not change, but kind of adjust some of our message to some of the people going into the clinic, because about half of them are no longer going in for surgical, but they're going in to take the first pill and then go home. And so we've had to make some changes along those lines as well.
And last time I spoke to a pregnancy resource center, matter of fact, last couple of times, I've had a theme in which I talk about the changing agenda of the abortion debate and the changing arena of the abortion debate. And part of that has to do with this idea of chemical abortions, RU486, prostaglandins, and all the rest. And so, if nothing else, it just illustrates again that this battle for pro-life is a battle of hearts and minds. And in some cases, it can happen in front of an abortion clinic, but it also needs to happen through programs like Point of View, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, when we're talking to people, a lot of times the tools that we give them are tools like, the brochures and the booklets and the information that we give them. Oftentimes, we didn't invent it. It was invented through, people that come and speak on your program and people who are out there with that kind of material. And the pregnancy help centers have really helped us, because a lot of times, like today, we're at the abortion clinic and the woman comes in the second trimester. She has to have a special procedure to remove the laminaria that is put inside her to enlarge her cervix. And so we have to contact the pregnancy help center. They have a doctor that will remove the laminaria that returns her back to her normal pregnancy. And so to have the right tools is very important, and to have the right message for that young lady or that woman to say, hey, look, I know you made half of a mistake here. We can fix this, and we can help you and get you in the right direction. So there has had to be some changes in some of our approaches with the people that are either in the second trimester or they're going to have a chemical abortion. So it's an ongoing battle. I mean, we hoped abortion would be over by now, but it's not, and they're continuing to take the lives of those little precious children, and so we're going to be there. And in spite of the COVID wars and the things that are going on with COVID, we've been out there from the very first day when Newsom announced that abortion clinics were essential. Then we decided so are sidewalk counselors. And so we have been warned and told. I just got cited the other day, and we just say, no, we're not pulling away from the abortion ministry. We're going to keep at it, keep standing in the gap. And we always need encouragement. You know, a lot of times the churches have caved, a lot of the churches, and we always need people encouraging, and that's why I love Point of View, because all I got to do is turn that on, go over to the van and turn that on, because a lot of times you're on at the same time I'm in an abortion clinic. And so it's good to have a positive encouragement and people that are focused the right way and have the real 2020 vision. And you just keep doing what we do because we know it's the righteous thing to do.
Let's see if we can, since you were talking about Point of View, I know that you have appreciated Point of View, and you've certainly already alluded to that, but what would you say to some of our listeners that have been listening to the program or maybe have concerns about pro-life issues? What would you say to those that we are encouraging to join with us on Truth Team?
Well, you can't get enough of Point of View. I mean, I have people call me up and say, hey, Don, are you listening? Are you listening to Point of View? You're going to like this. I said, well, I'm out at the clinic. So I'm okay, all right. And I go and turn it on, you know. And it's the kind of encouragement that we can't do without, especially as a lot of churches and a lot of people are struggling with what to do in this troubled world. And you guys seem to always have the right guest at the right time and the right message from these people that you have as guests, and you can't beat it. I mean, for me, Point of View is just listening, just watching and learning and buying the books that you keep making me buy. All of the things that are going on like that, those are the tools that we need to be more effective for Christ. And we need to have those tools. When he says, be ready in season and out of season, Point of View makes that possible. They're a ministry that, deals with the issues of the day, and it helps you have the right tools to take on the messed up world that we're living in. And boy, is it messed up right now. So I love you guys, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the Point of View has done, even in my life. There was times I would be out in front of the abortion clinic, and I'd be waiting for the next set of couples come in, and I go sit in my van and flip on the radio, and there you are speaking something very appropriate for that moment. And here I am sitting in the van a little bit discouraged about what's going on at the clinic, and you have the right guest at the right time, and you're saying the right thing. And I appreciate you guys so much of what you guys have done over the years. I've been utilizing your ministry.
Well, Don, it's always great to have you on the program. Keep standing up there for truth and standing up there for life. And thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thank you, Kerby. We love and appreciate you.
Just before we take a break, Brad, I think we still have an opportunity for people to join with us if they appreciate this pro-life message that we are talking about.
We do indeed. We have room for you at the table. Every dollar being doubled right now at 1-800-347-5151. That's a toll-free number, 800-347-5151. We're encouraging you to consider prayerfully joining the Truth Team. It's $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 for the year. We've got some gifts we want to give you, but most important, we want to be able to count you as standing with us. And the number again, 800-347-5151, or you can go on the web at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we have a couple other things to cover, a few articles that we've posted that you might be interested in as well. But as we go to a break, this is a perfect time if you've been wanting to call, 800-347-5151. Of course, we have information at the website, pointofview.net.
Every dollar doubled.
Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
Over the years that I've been involved in ministry as a pastor, as a seminary professor, and now in what we do, it was at one point difficult for me to ask people to support a ministry financially. I kind of had this idea that I was asking something from them, that it was in some sense a favor they're doing for me or whatnot. Over the years, I've come to understand, if you find something God's in, then giving them an opportunity to invest in that is a privilege. Giving somebody a chance to join God at work, to give a gift that is going to be used literally to change lives and souls and to literally make a difference all around the world is a privilege. I want to be part of something like that. I want my life to count. I want to leave a legacy. I want to do something that matters. Point of view matters. Every day it matters. You're speaking the truth in love. You're speaking God's word, and it never returns void. And our listeners have an opportunity to invest in eternal difference if they'll do this.
Again, great comments by our friend Dr. Jim Dennison. And again, you've met him on an airplane of all places.
I did.
So it's kind of fun. Let me just mention that one of the other articles we've posted, and this is relevant to our listeners out in California, where Don is, but all of you around the country, is the argument being made right now that all these fires in California, Oregon, Washington, all sorts of places in the West is due to climate change. And this piece is by Bjorn Lomborg, who wrote the book The Skeptical Environmentalist, has a new book out called False Alarm as president of the Copenhagen Consensus. But nevertheless, even though he believes that indeed climate change is real, that it's man-made and something we need to deal with, he says we need to deal with it smartly, but he then just simply says, I love the title of this, sorry, solar panels won't stop California's fires. And I wanted you to hear this because you might have some people say, well, of course this is due to climate change, and he even acknowledges there may be a little bit to that, but he simply says experts estimate that climate change plays a very minor role, and then gives you some of the facts I gave you yesterday, and that is that it used to be before 1800, California saw anywhere from 4 to 11 million acres burn, but once they started fire suppression in the 1900s, only about 250,000 acres at most are ever burned annually. And so you have all this unburnt fuel, all this wood fuel debris, all this underbrush that has created these massive fires. And again, if you think that global warming is the reason for it, actually we had many more fires before everybody said we have global warming. Right. So even though as an environmentalist, and even quotes from Nature's Sustainability and other groups, that even though they may accept the belief in climate change and belief that it's man-made, even they're going, please, Governor, stop saying this. And please, President or former Vice President Joe Biden, stop saying this, because climate change is not the reason we have those fires. So anyway, just another resource I wanted you to know that exists on the website, pointofview.net. And Brad, that brings us back to the fact that even when we don't have a chance to cover everything in the couple of hours in which we do the broadcast, we have other articles that you can read, you can post, you can send to some of your skeptical friends, and we're really equipping you to make a difference and to make a really positive impact in the culture.
The website, Kerby, is content rich. I mean, it is an incredible resource that's available that's what we do it every day. So you can download and read up and be aware of the topics and where you need to stand in a biblical world view. May I say that again? A biblical worldview. And you can be part of the Truth Team right now financially. We do this a couple times a year, and this week is Truth Team Week. The phone number to call to be a part of what we're doing is 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled right now at 800-347-5151. You can also give on the web at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
You know, some of you might say, well, what's coming up tomorrow? Well, we got Gary Bauer on tomorrow, awesome. And that will be very good. And certainly we'll be talking about, of course, something we just talked about, the peace treaty and a couple of other things. He's sort of been our eyes and ears there in Washington, D.C. And then, hold on to your hats, we've got Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty. Right. I never know what he's going to say, but he'll be with us as well. So again, we encourage you to certainly join with us. That number is 800-347-5151. Well, let's hear from some of our listeners.
Point of View Truth Team.
Point of View has been a big tool in helping me work through what I believe and understand why I believe it, and given me the ability to argue for it and to defend it.
I am increasingly dismayed at not only the slanted coverage that mainstream media provides, but the lack of coverage. If I hadn't listened to Point of View, I mean, I know people who don't even know there's a difference between embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells. And I wouldn't have known if I had not listened to your show. And I give to you guys, but I'm going to increase that amount because I think you guys are so important.
I want you to think, what would we do if we didn't have Point of View? Give something to Point of View to make sure we don't lose this wonderful voice. And thanks again for what you do.
to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
I do appreciate Point of View and what you folks are doing. You really are doing a great job to educate and to help Christian folks do a better job to honor Christ in all that we do.
Point of View Truth Team.
Just before we have a few minutes left, I thought we might just talk about this election. One of the things we make available on this flash drive is a video in which I explain not only the presidential election, but especially the Senate election. Those of you watching online, this is, again, just a chart looking at what might happen if various states go one way or the other. And it really comes back to the issue we talked about a minute ago with Don Blythe. Because right now you haven't heard the Democrats, whether it is the Democrats at the national level or even those running for these U.S. Senate races or even the House of Representatives, mention the issue of abortion. But if indeed the Democrats control the House of Representatives, as they do right now, you can see that all sorts of pro-abortion ideas will continue to push through there. If Democrats were to take control of the Senate, the same thing. And, of course, if you have a Democrat that's in the White House, whether it's Joe Biden or then later replaced by Kamala Harris, we know what that is. On the other hand, if you're concerned about the issue of life, and you have President Donald Trump in office, he has put very good justices on the courts and, of course, 2 individuals on the Supreme Court. If there's a Republican Senate, then I do believe that I'm pretty sure that you're going to have some of these members of the Supreme Court step down. And that's going to be Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It could be Stephen Breyer. It could be Sonia Sotomayor. Might be Clarence Thomas. I don't think so, but it's possible. And what that does, Brad, is suggest that then it is really likely that Roe versus Wade would be overturned. Now, what that means is it will just send it back to the states, and you'd have some states that would have abortion mills, perhaps, others which were not. But this would change really the ministry that Don Blythe has. And so if you're concerned about the issue of life, you really need to be also paying attention not only to the presidential race, but the U.S. Senate races, because those are going to be key to whether or not, as Don Blythe points out, we still have abortion as legal, but there may be a time in the future where it's not.
And we need to be praying. That just came to me right now. We absolutely must be on our knees as Christians to stand for righteousness and truth. And that's what this is all about, that we do at Point of View. The Truth Team, we're asking you to join at $1 a day or more. And we ask you to please do that because we need to have your support to continue to be the voice of biblical Christianity. 800-347-5151. Affect the culture, please. Influence the culture. Help us do that. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net. And we'll be around after the show closes out with phones so you can keep calling.
And I might just mention that, too, because as I said, tomorrow we're going to have Gary Bauer, Phil Robertson with us, and a number of other guests that we'll be talking about. So I think you'll enjoy that. But at the same time, even though we're going off the air, of course, 24/7, you can go to pointofview.net, but we'll still answer the phone for a few more minutes. So that's 800-347-5151. Brad, appreciate you being with us. Every dollar doubled. And again, 800-347-5151.
Have you seen the new book, In Defense of Looting? Yep, the author says that theft can be a really good thing. Oh, except for theft of the writer's intellectual property. There's a warning against that right inside the book. Steal from thee, not from me. NPR even did an interview with the author, helping spread this mental virus to countless others. Think of Point of View Radio as a vaccine against such things. When you support Kerby Anderson and the rest of the team, you're saying we need unchanging truth in these uncertain times. You're saying that right is right, wrong is wrong. You're providing an alternative to the distortions and outright lies of so many media sources in our day. Don't let fake news go unopposed. Join the Truth Team now by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.